Bonjour à tous. Welcome to the Nouvel Esprit podcast. We are your hosts, Guillermo Moreno and
And oh yeah, me, Jeremy Hossotter.
yes, we are one man down today. And we look forward to, of course, future episodes where the three of us are together again. Now, today we decided to go certain routes regarding a topic that we've delved into quite a bit, which is identity politics, but more towards the right, what with the radical traditionalism. It did occur to us, at least on my end, it occurred to me to proceed with sharing an experience that I had regarding identity politics on the left, because that is just it's the uh, just for lack of other words, status quo, where when it comes to identity politics, the largest portion of the American population that is susceptible to identity politics is on the left. Well, let's go ahead and proceed with this issue, this controversial issue, and Le Nouvel Esprit, it's definitely not a podcast on politics, but we should just inevitably delve into it at some level just because of where we're at as a society. And well, first and foremost, an inevitable figure that is unavoidable, just for lack of other words, is former President Donald Trump. Jeremy, I would like to start off this podcast episode by sharing just our initial reactions to the person of Donald Trump when he first started running for president. I think this is necessary just because we didn't, it was a journey in a manner of speaking when it came to our thoughts on this person and how he affected the mainstream media and culture, not necessarily single-handedly, but certainly drastically. I just remember that towards this, I want to say this fall of 2015, spring 2016, that's when he came to the picture, and he was quite the controversial figure at our alma mater. Alma mater, was he not?
Yeah, I remember there was a lot of fierce debates about him. And in fact, you were almost seen as not a conservative if you did not vote for him. But it was interesting. I actually didn't vote for him in the first election.
I didn't either. I didn't either. Would you share if you're comfortable sharing? Why not?
Well, there's a variety of factors. I mean, I just kind of looked at what Trump said, and he said a lot of outlandish and weird things. Um, and it seemed like he was on a power trip. There was kind of I just got this general sense of it seemed like he was a little bit of the Nietzsche idea of the Ubermensch, and that's not really who you want in power. This idea of the Overman or the Superman who uses his force of will to get what he wants. Just think power over nature, power unhinged from questions of what is true and good. And so I just voted third party in that election.
As did I. Now, I'm glad that you clarified what you mentioned about the Ubermensch, just because in the episode that I did with Charles, we focused quite a bit on Nietzsche, and he explained how Nietzsche attempted to give life meaning. So you are your own God, basically, because we have killed God. You be your own God, and um it's a poor attempt, honestly, at
Yeah, and
finding the
if,
meaning of life.
yeah, if you really think about it, the Ubermensch is really Nietzsche's own messiah, his own concept of a messiah type figure, right?
Of course.
Because the Ubermensch is the one who is, I guess, the hero in Nietzsche's view, for lack of words. right? The he's like the ideal person, and everyone else is kind of the sheep that just follows the will power of the leader.
I can see that. I can see how you reached those conclusions. Yeah, just in some of the things that Trump said. I just
Yeah.
remember, if I can build off of this on my experiences. Like you said, you were seen as not conservative if you voted for him, just because, well, this individual, he has a very liberal background. He was a lifelong Democrat,
Right,
and
right.
there's footage of him saying, "I'm very pro-choice," and also he supports gay marriage.
Yeah,
Those handful of things. It's like,
he had a
mhm,
yeah, it's interesting. He had that long history of being pro-abortion. And as a Catholic, you
sure.
have to be wary of people who are pro-abortion because that is murder by definition.
What were your thoughts about the fact that he just said, just one day, he just woke up and said he's pro-life and running for president, and having people suddenly support him just because he
Yeah.
said this? What were your thoughts on that, if any?
Well, it's just when you have kind of a little bit of an outlandish behavior, erratic social media use, you can't really judge what that person's going to do. You have to look at their actions besides social media. And for me, I didn't really have much to go on be on his past, which I did not agree with. So for me, my opinion about Trump didn't really change until after he was elected president, when I got to see his actions, when he was showing, yes, he was supporting the pro-life movement, like by addressing the March for Life rally, for example,
Mm,
among other things. When I saw those things and other things he did for the country, I was like, wow, he's actually a good president.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, I do want to touch on a couple of things. Firstly, let me go ahead and share what happened at one point, just more so connected with the topic of identity politics, especially in terms of race, because leftists have the race card and they used it vehemently against this individual, Donald Trump. The mainstream media viewers were just led to believe that this person was racist.
Yeah,
And initially, he had some very cutthroat things to say about immigration. So, yeah, it just didn't sit well with a lot of us. But here's what happened. And I don't remember, I wish I could remember the date more specifically, but it was that 2015, 2016 period of time when he was having a press conference and he kicked out the Spanish news anchor, Jorge Ramos. And there was footage of him. He's essentially telling him, go back to Univision, and having Ramos kicked out of the press conference. And viewers were led to believe, see, he is so racist. He kicked out a Hispanic news anchor. Wow, that's terrible. And sure, such a thing would be terrible if that was the case. But me, just having quite a bit of exposure to the Spanish mainstream media and this news anchor in particular, I thought, wait a minute. I know for a fact that Ramos is what's a nice way to say? Just, I can't find a nice way to describe this individual, but he could be a jerk. What do I mean by that? I've seen him in the Spanish news media. I've seen him cut people off. I've seen him interrupt people. I've seen him cut to commercials when whoever he's interviewing is expressing him or herself in a way that doesn't fit his narrative. I've seen him do that. I've seen him do that. And I thought, let me find some longer footage of what actually happened. Sure enough, he absolutely deserved to be kicked out of the press conference because he was just firing away with questions. And yeah, Trump at the time, and I guess no, it wasn't a press conference. It was an occasion in which he was allowing questions to be asked, but he was calling on people to ask questions, and Ramos kept on interrupting. He just kept on firing questions away
Okay.
about immigration,
So he
and
was talking out of turn.
he was speaking out of turn.
Okay.
Trump specifically told him, "Be quiet and or sit down. You were not called." And he just
Yeah.
selected the other person. And if I recall correctly, I don't recall for sure, but he might have told them, "Wait your turn," and he did not. He kept on. He was rude. He was uh,
Okay.
blatantly arrogant. Like, who did he think he was? That he
Hmm.
could just fire questions away as if just demanding the answers to his questions as if he had the right, him above everyone else in that conference.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
honestly don't remember this event at all.
so I posted this on Facebook calling out Jorge Ramos, basically saying he's getting way too much praise because he deserved to get kicked out of the conference. And look, this is not a slap in the face, but what's another word I'm looking for? Look, this is a political stunt that the mainstream media is trying to take advantage of to get more people on their side. Oh, look, he's racist. Vote for the other guys. Vote for the non-racists. And like, no, that's frankly. And at the time, I did think it was racist. At the time, I did think he was Hitler. I will say that I thought Trump was Hitler at the time. But what actually happened just was different than what we were being presented. It was a whole different story. And by the way, what I didn't realize was that later on, Trump let Ramos back in. He let him back into the conference and let him ask his questions. And he did.
Oh,
And they were
interesting.
hashing it out. Excuse me?
So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a lot of political manipulation they're doing then. If they let
Absolutely.
him back in after
Yes.
supposedly kicking him out for being racist,
Yes.
that's a lot of
Yes.
information they hid from you.
Yes. Now, to be fair, I don't recall if the Spanish mainstream media did say, "Oh, they let him back in." I want to be fair. I don't know for sure if they omitted that information. But on the
That's not going to be
surface,
information people are going to remember. They're just going to remember, oh, this guy
sure,
was kicked
exactly,
out.
exactly.
That's propaganda.
There we go. Okay. Oh, that's the word I was looking for. Well,
I'm glad
that's
we got
disturbing.
it. Yeah,
That's disturbing. And what
they're
this,
they're using
yes,
the isolated truth of the event, him getting kicked out, and they're manipulating it to spin a political narrative. That's propaganda.
yeah, and as uh, a Spanish speaker from an immigrant family, I'm supposed to buy this? No, I want the truth. I want the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And we were being manipulated, like you said. So I posted this on Facebook, calling out Jorge Ramos. And what disappointed me even more was the lashback.
Oh yeah, so you're getting ridiculed on Facebook over this?
Yes, yes, by people who I thought were rational, and they are rational. And I'll bet at this point they've changed their minds on Donald Trump, some of them. But a couple of things. Number one, two or three people were the ones who were frankly borderline attacking me, like criticizing me, certainly criticizing me. And I was disappointed to see the likes that they were getting by people who I thought would be on my side, partially because, hey, is what I'm saying true? Yes, it is. Therefore, you should be on my side. And also, I'm biased as well. I thought you'd be on my side, even if I was partially wrong, but I'm completely right.
Yeah,
So, but to get to the point, one person did display his manipulation as in the passive sense by stating Jorge Ramos is standing up for us Hispanics. He said something along those lines. And that made me just consider all the more, hey, wait a minute. We're buying into this narrative, into this lie of us versus them, basically. We're not
yeah.
addressing individual people, individual causes, case by case. I know it's tedious, but it's easier to lump all these issues under an umbrella, mainly the issues of race and immigration, because frankly, not all Hispanics are immigrants, and not all immigrants are Hispanic. And in fact, I know that the controversial issue was illegal immigration. And of course, the majority of illegal immigration is from south of the US border, but there are illegal immigrants from all over the place, even Europe. So, but they've taken they've confused the two, Hispanic and immigrant, to the point where, if you're anti-immigrant, or if you support the border wall, for example, you're racist somehow. And I just really saw the need to break free from that paradigm. I saw that need. Now, the way that's oh, I guess we touched on it a little bit, that yeah, we take these identities. I know, as someone from an immigrant family, we can't help, at least the immigrants can't help but come into the US and see this as the white man's land. Oh, our land, the immigrants, it's Mexico, it's El Salvador, it's Cuba, whatever it may be. That's our land. This place, it's not for us, but we're here for the future of our children. We want them to have a better life than we did back home. And us, the children, at some level, of course, we identify with our family heritage, to the point where even if you were born here, and maybe even if you were several generations down the road from the immigrants that got here, we still identify as, say, Mexican. Like we say, I'm Mexican, whether or not I was born there, whether or not I was raised there, whether or not I even speak Spanish, something so essential to Mexico, Spanish, even if we don't know it. I think at times we can call ourselves Mexican because of our identity with um that's where I want to say that we confuse race and culture.
Yeah. And that is interesting because, like myself,
Hmm.
I don't consider myself German or Native American or
Oh,
whatever else I am. I just consider myself American. I don't I don't really look at a particular geographical region and say I'm that, other than the country I live in.
can I ask you something? Would you identify, judging by the state where you're from, where you were born and raised?
Um, Not really. I
Not really.
mean, I've lived in 6 different states over the last 10 or so years.
Okay.
And I would say I identify a little part with all those states
Oh,
and a little bit with where my wife is from. I think just part of where you live, there's a little bit of that rubs off on you. Like when I lived in Alabama, the, the song Sweet Home Alabama takes on a new meaning if you live there. Or, and something similar can be said when you live in West Virginia and you hear John Denver, you know?
that's a beautiful way to put it, honestly. And the reason why I ask about your state is because the US, it's not like Guatemala, small enough where the culture is more, I don't know if monotonous is the right word, but I get more consistent. It doesn't change dramatically depending on the region, but in the US, yes, it does. You got the South, you got the Southwest, you got the what's it called? New England, and so
Yeah,
forth. Yeah, you have all
yeah,
those cultures, all those dishes, all those accents. It's
yeah.
beautiful.
You're forgetting the most important one, though.
Uh, give me a minute.
The most important one.
So the most important difference.
The most important geographic location or area, geographical area in the US.
No, I'm talking in terms of like regional cultures.
Yeah, I'm talking most important one.
All right, I give up.
Texas. Ha 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 ha.
I always did think that Texas represents America. In a strange way, Texas represents America more than say Washington D.C., New York, and California. I always felt there's something special about Texas. Now, that's my opinion. Um,
It's interesting just living in Texas for the last 3 years,
mm,
just the identity. Like when I was in West Virginia, there wasn't that much of identity. Ohio, there's a lot of state identity. Like they got the Buckeye chocolates, for example. Indiana, I didn't really feel a state identity so much. Alabama, there was more so of a state identity, but Texas really has a state identity.
absolutely,
They are proud of
absolutely.
it.
They
Like you got the Texas waffle iron, you got Texas shaped chips, Texas shaped chicken nuggets, bricks, you name it.
um
They put the Texas flag on everything. You
and
don't
Texas
see that
barbecue.
anywhere else.
Yeah,
We got barbecue and from other
but
places.
there's Texas barbecue.
There's Memphis barbecue.
Okay,
There's Carolina
yeah,
barbecue.
yeah. But point being, I'm
Kansas City.
yes, I'm building off of what you're sharing now. Um, and you really hit the nail on the head when you mentioned geography. Part of the problem when it comes to the difference between race and culture, just because they're not synonymous. Now, of course, the cultures south of the US border, they have more in common with amongst themselves than cultures elsewhere, say like well, I don't even know. I'm not I shouldn't speak for Asians, but at least throughout Latin America, we all speak Spanish. In Asia, no, it's a diversity of languages. It's
Right,
incredible.
right.
So no, there's some more so commonalities in Spanish speaking cultures, but um, here's my point when it comes to culture. Culture is defined more so by the people living in a particular region. So, and that it depends where you want to draw the line. Because, say, American culture, okay, we'll just take the United States. But what about Southern culture? All right, you take portions of the South and so forth. But what makes the United States and places like New York and Los Angeles unique is how you have cultures, ethnic cultures from all over the world, frankly. Are those places cultures? Is LA its own culture? I argue, yes, it is. Despite that, there's a diversity of languages. Guess what? All these cultures make up this one region, in which it's just not weird uh,
Yeah,
being next to strangers and they're speaking Arabic or Armenian or
yeah.
Vietnamese. It's
That
not weird at
that's
all.
just part of the American experience
No,
because you can say that about any major metropolitan area.
you're right. You're right.
But on the other hand, there is a LA culture that is not a San Antonio culture.
Oh, absolutely.
I like the Pittsburgh culture, but I don't like the Atlanta culture. And then the
Really.
Pacific Northwest is its own weird culture. My
I agree.
dad, my dad likes to joke that if he's in an airport, he can just tell what terminal has the flight to Oregon just by the way that people dress and act,
Oh, wow. Whoa.
because they are that different. But
That's
that also
interesting.
comes with just being able to go on the thousands of flights he has,
Oh,
be
of
able to
course.
discern that.
Of course. Absolutely. That's fascinating. It'd be fruitful to go into other cultures, maybe on a separate episode, just because I think culture would be a good topic regarding personalism to address.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah.
Culture is a very important topic for personalism,
Oh,
and
I'll bet.
especially personalist thinkers like Karol Wojtyła when he
Hmm.
became Pope.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Um, yeah, what I want to share is that culture has always been contingent on geography or region. phenotype is besides the point. And now, in this day and age, it's more irrelevant than ever.
You want to elaborate what you mean by phenotype?
In other words, okay, we swear, quote unquote, that race and culture are the same thing because the people who share the culture look alike, and they don't look like people from that culture and that culture and that culture, which I wouldn't deny, but I argue it's still besides the point. What I mean by phenotype, skin color, eye color, and the characteristics that describe someone as Black, Asian, Arab, and so forth.
Okay. Yeah.
Especially, yes, and especially in American culture when, well, okay, there, what's to stop us from intermarrying with people from other ethnicities? We don't lose culture. We kind of just make a note, we build on what we already had.
Right. Yeah, I see what you're getting
Okay, excellent. Now, one thing that and Jeremy, if you recall, like around when we first met, I would talk quite a bit about race, wouldn't I?
at. Sure.
Uh, what I will say, what I want to express, and we could go back and forth about whether or not there's such a thing as race, because for numerous reasons. But in the end, my argument is that these notions of the different races are nominal, because we're not so different to the point where we really are different. In fact, we're so similar we can procreate, where we're the same
I think we can
humanity.
go make a stronger case.
Excuse me?
I think we can make a stronger case based off the fact that in Genesis 2, when God
Mm,
creates man out of the clay and breathing life into his nostrils with God's breath, the man, if you look at the Hebrew, it's Adam, right? Adam is the Hebrew word for universal humanity. It's all of humanity that God is creating there. Yes, we have to distinguish two meanings, one, the literal historical
mm.
Adam and Eve, but on the other hand, it does also represent of the common origin of all of humanity in that act of creation. So
Oh,
that's something to think about when we talk about race
mm.
and racism. It really doesn't make sense to talk about different races in this theological sense where we all have this common unity and all have this shared ontological definition.
Thank you. Okay, perfect.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, just to be clear, what we mean by ontological definition is just saying that the type of being that
Mm-hmm.
each and
Mm-hmm.
every human person is defined by our relationship with God as being made in the image and likeness of God, as Genesis chapter 1 teaches. That is how that is the metaphysical definition of man right there.
Absolutely. And as I've shared with you, at a certain point, my explanation for how race is nominal is just a very metaphysical, very Aristotelian approach. And
Yeah,
yeah, well,
yeah.
yes,
I
I'm sorry.
mean, it is nominal in this big picture sense,
Yes.
but there is a attempt in using categories within race to try and look at kind of the historical contingencies of the human species.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So even though there is this um, truth that needs to be maintained about the unity of the human race, it is useful to talk about, say, Arabs versus Italians.
Well, weren't Irish considered like black people once upon a time? like when they
Yeah,
started
sure.
immigrating to the United States. Yeah, that
So
and
were the
oh
Italians.
yeah, and that's horrible.
Yeah. Or you think after the Korean War, the Americans were very racist against the Chinese.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because if you recall the Korean War, the Americans pushed, like, the North Koreans invaded South Korea, then the Americans went in and pretty much destroyed the North Korean army, went all the way to the North Korean Chinese border, and the I don't remember if Mao Zedong was ruling then or not, but the Chinese ruler looked at all the American troops right across the river, and he sent in hundreds of thousands of troops right across the border and started pushing the Americans back. And so you had a short conflict become a long drawn out war, and because of that, you had the a lot of racism towards the Chinese.
That that's tragic. And
Yeah.
building off of what you're sharing, would you say that identity politics necessarily includes race?
So the thing with identity politics
Mm,
is it's not ordered towards the common good. It's ordered towards the propping up of a particular political party. So
okay, okay.
if a political party is using identity politics and they're playing the quote race card, they're using race as a ideological weapon and not as a means of uniting the citizenship in towards ordering them towards a common good.
That makes sense.
You think about the Democrats, they talk about race all of the time, talk about the black vote, the Hispanic vote,
Right, right.
and the real question is not can we depend upon you, but is what your party doing is, is that actually ordered towards what's going to be good and just for our country? That should be the number one question we ask ourselves. And if you honestly believe that is the Democrat Party, then that's who you should vote for. If you can swallow the pill of the fact that they support abortion and infanticide at this point.
Uh, that's one topic I would like to get into, the Democratic Party. I just, um, in my opinion, they don't care. They just whatever it takes to get votes. And here's a
I think
relatively
it's
easy
not
one.
really the votes themselves that they're after. Yes, they want power and votes, but I think it's just more so power anymore by any means. Because if they really wanted votes, they would not have screwed up this year of Biden's presidency so badly.
I never quite thought of it that way.
You just look at the first year of Biden's presidency. It's been nothing but a catastrophe economically, globally, just across the nation.
No, it absolutely is.
He's he's going to be one of the worst presidents in the history of the United States if something drastic doesn't change.
I actually still can't believe he is president. Um,
It's so crazy.
yeah,
You talk about inflation. You talk about how we knew for several months that there was no infant formula being made, and now all of a sudden you have babies starving. We knew about infant for the factories were shut down for 3 months, and they did nothing for 3 months. It seems it's crazy.
uh,
You look at Afghanistan catastrophe.
Oh yeah.
Look at some of the
That was
other,
horrible.
there's so many things. Why would, if they cared about votes, why would they do so many idiotic things? Either they're complete imbeciles or they just don't care.
Or both.
Could be both.
Um, it makes me wonder. I wish I could meet someone who regrets voting for Biden. I'll bet they're out there, but I wish
Sure.
someone would like, you know what? Trump was right. And
And I don't even know if Trump was the right choice for president either.
I think he was. What makes you say
And
otherwise?
in some respect, I think we would have had a stronger economy and better global relationships. Like the global situation, I don't think would be so precarious as it is now. I don't think we'd have this situation where the world's might be facing hunger due to the Ukrainian war, for example. But on the other hand, Trump himself was came with his own kind of baggage. He was a loose cannon in some respects. And as long as it's firing in the right direction, you're good. But what if he fires backwards, for example, right?
What would you say was one of his screw ups?
I was just thinking about that as I was talking. I don't remember offhand, just because, Trump is now long ago after a year of Biden.
Yeah, look, as much as I
I'm,
miss him, just real quick, as much as I miss Donald Trump, I hope he doesn't run again.
yeah, he's just, because of his behavior and everything, he's
Sure.
very polarizing. If
Hmm.
he becomes a political contender again, he's just going to divide the nation more.
Yes,
And
I
that's not the
agree.
type, he doesn't have the type of character that can unite the nation, and that's what's needed.
But I just where I want to push back a little bit is that I don't think that the Democrats would compromise at all. Not even with say not just any Republican candidate who was decent. Like
You know,
like McCain, I guess. I don't know. I guess that's as much that's as far as any leftist or
that's
socially liberal person would go.
that's a problem on both sides. You have Republicans so infused with identity politics that they will not work with the Democrats, and you have Democrats doing the same.
I
And
don't
in
disagree.
reality, the voters should fire all of those people and put in new people willing to work together. Because whoever embraces identity politics, whether you are on the left or right, you're not working towards the common good of the nation. You're working for your own good that is being put above that of the nation. And if you're going to be a public servant, you need to make that self sacrifice and surrender yourself for the good of the nation first. That is what a public servant is called to do. That's what the name public servant refers to.
That's what I saw in Trump, honestly. He wasn't about identity politics. He was he was quite frankly against it to the point of running for president.
He he really sacrificed a lot.
He did.
I
He
mean,
made
he had to sell hotels. He lost millions of dollars.
yeah,
He lost
yeah.
contracts. And the reason why he lost a lot of that is identity politics. You don't
Yes.
agree with us, we're going to cancel you. I forget who it was, but there was some kind of far right wing conservative who was kind of outspoken about matters that did not sit well with the left. And one of my colleagues and I were talking about, it, and he brought up this example of how this basically podcaster commentator got canceled from everything. So he could not literally use like a bank account or whatever because they just declined everything. And so his fans would actually mail him money, cash through the mail, and he would make videos opening up the money. And when this was happening, he realized that I the advocates, the promoters of identity politics from the left, they did not merely want to silence his voice, but they wanted him and his family to starve because they
That's
were
terrible.
eliminating his means of making a living because he wasn't able to do these financial transactions. And that is the scary thing about identity politics and how it is working against, say, our First Amendment rights of freedom
Uh,
to
yes,
speak and just even to live a life. Everyone in this country has a right to live, and if you should not be eliminating people's voices simply because you disagree. It would be another matter if, for example, you have a neo-Nazi, then you have a good reason to remove their bank accounts because they are someone that's acting against the common good. But simply removing people because they disagree with you, that's not promoting conversation, that's shutting down conversation. And that is promoting propaganda. That is political manipulation.
I completely agree. And I am glad that you pointed one major thing, just one major criticism, because the right is susceptible to identity politics too. And that's what scared me because when Trump said he was pro-life and all conservatives, oh, let's vote for Trump. I'm like, come on. He says in a YouTube video he was pro-choice. He's flaming liberal. He will not budge against about gay marriage. Why would I take his word for it just because he says he's pro-life? So that was my critique of his.
Yeah.
But my critique of right wingers, conservatives, I should say, conservatives who gung ho supported him just because he says pro-life. I was critical. I just did not trust him until, as you said, oh no, his policies and the March for Life. No, he was showing, yeah, okay. It's not like people can't change their minds. I remember,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
just we just have to see some evidence first
sure, sure.
that you've actually changed.
Mm-hmm.
I think
That,
a good example is like a student that I teach.
ooh,
If I teach a student and I find out they cheated on a test, they now have to go through several actions, show me that they can be um, worthy of me trusting them again,
mm,
right? Is that same kind of idea? If you do something that means I have to distrust you, you now have to, through your actions, show me that you are worthy of trust again. And that applies to politicians just as well. I remember about a decade ago when the Republican Party was debating on whether or not to accept abortion on their party platform.
mm-hmm.
I forget the context of when it was. I just remember it was about 2009, 2010, maybe 2011, somewhere in there. And when I saw the supposed conservative party debating whether they should accept abortion, that there was a large proportion that did, I just said to myself, this is not the party I want to identify myself with.
Um,
And it simply because if you cannot accept that the thing grown inside the woman's womb is a child who has a right to live and have a life, then you and me have nothing in common, politically speaking, on that point.
no, that's a seriously good way to put it. If we can't even agree on the fundamentals of life, the fundamentals of life, then we're not going to agree on how to proceed
Yeah.
with life.
If you cannot agree about what is life and
Mm,
what qualifies as life, then how are you going to tell me how to live my
sure,
life?
absolutely. That's
I
a whole
mean,
different worldview.
you think about identity politics is all about how you're claiming people should live a certain way.
Of course,
But if you are promoting values that are against life, then why should I listen to you about how to live? That's contradictory.
I agree. And Oh geez, I had another idea, another thought, a couple of topics ago. Um, I think it was about race, just going back to race. I think that identity politics does not necessarily involve race, but I think race does necessarily involve identity politics at this point. We can't quite talk about race besides identity politics in any context.
Yeah, I think that's just a problem with, can- or I say a mark against American politics that
Mm,
we can't talk about politics without race, and we can't talk about race without like identity politics. It
right.
just shows kind of a infantilism in our ability to think politically.
Yeah. What disturbed me is how people buy this, honestly. And just yeah, you try to bring down someone politically. You do one of two things when you got nothing. You accuse them of racism or uh allegations of sexual assault.
Yeah. And you think about it, when you bring up allegations like that, you're now working yourself in an anti-life manner because now you're using political manipulation to destroy the life of another
Yes.
person. You're
Yes.
acting against the common good by using those as weapons. I mean, by all means, if it's true,
Of
then
course.
it should be reported, and that person should be justly condemned. They should be publicly ostracized. And if they break a law, they should be judged according to the letter of the law. But if you're just going to be saying, oh, this person touched me just to get attention or to make a person look bad, then you are the problem.
Especially if it's not true.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're talking about. If it's not true, then you are the problem,
Oh,
not the other
no,
person.
no,
Yeah.
okay, no, I thought you were expressing uh either or case scenario, whether it was true or
Oh,
whether
yeah.
it was not.
No,
Okay, okay.
no. Yeah. No. I switched this. I
Oh,
switched from the one case to the other.
oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
And then just going back to Trump, personally, I knew from the get-go you can't trust the mainstream media. You can't. But as much as I despised Donald Trump at the time, as much as I maybe I hated him, I did think he was Hitler.
Yeah. I never would go that far with them.
No,
I was just suspicious.
S- um, I'll have to find the article that really just scared me into taking Donald Trump seriously. Um, it's a slightly separate topic, but okay, I just thought he was. Yeah, I voted third party too. He was that bad in my view. But at some point, and I think this was the breaking point for me, or at least the red pill moment, when I saw for myself that the mainstream media, that social media, that big tech took advantage of this situation for propagandistic purposes, and it was a lie. It was a lie. I just knew the enemy of my enemy is my friend. At some level, I have to be
Yeah.
open to Donald Trump if my enemy hates him enough to lie about him.
Yeah, I think that view is a little bit of a fallacy that the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
It is. It is.
I think perfect example of that is Soviet Russia, World War II.
Oh, good point.
I mean, I think that's a really good counter example right there. And we're still suffering from that one.
We are, tragically. I just knew I cannot trust what the media says about Trump. And if they say
Yeah.
he's racist, What if he's not? Because he might not be. It
Yeah,
might like I thought he was, but no. And yeah, we just it doesn't take a genius to realize that the the socially liberal mainstream media is leftist. They support quote unquote liberal issues, but and I'd like to go into detail when it comes to theocratic propaganda about how yeah, just liberal causes, liberal in the social political sense of the term, it inevitably leads to a kind of leftism because of the Ubermensch um, disposition behind social liberalism, if that makes sense.
sure.
Well, um, that was that. That was yeah, a red pill moment for me.
Yeah.
Which one thing that I would for all of our listeners, because I certainly hope that we have a huge variety of listeners who okay, maybe uh depending on who's listening, or maybe even not so much. I just want to conclude by sharing that it's not necessarily, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy. It's not about what's conservative and what's liberal. Rather, it's what's true and what is false. Let's
Uh,
just stick with the truth.
Yeah, I would elaborate a little bit more because what is true is also going, we want what is also good and just, because what we want to say just ordered society that is going to be good and ordered towards the truth, right?
And I'm glad that you connected the truth with the good, because as you shared previously, that yeah, if we were resorting to propaganda, we don't care about the common good, and that's dangerous. That's disturbing.
Yeah. You think about, to use a recent example, everyone protesting in front of the Supreme Court justices, their
Mm,
houses and their neighborhoods. It doesn't matter what political party you belong to. You should be opposed to that because that's a violation of the common good to try and sway the opinions of the court. Regardless of how you feel about Roe v. Wade, you should recognize that there needs to be a respect for law and order and for the impartial judgment of the Supreme Court justices. Whether or not you agree, you should be working towards what is going to be productive to a good and just society.
yeah,
It's not, identity politics plays into the power of a particular group, and they reward their members once they get into power. What we need to do as a society is shift from identity politics to talking about truth, goodness, and justice again within politics. Is this policy going to be good? Is it a just policy or is it not? That is
yeah.
how we need to be talking about politics again. Instead, it's usually, oh, are we giving free money to these people or these people? Oh, hey, we promised free money to these people so we can get their votes. Or hey, we're gonna say we are against abortion so we can get votes from these people.
Mhm. Yes, yes.
Or we're going to build a wall just because people say things. They're saying things to get votes more so than they are to actually do what is good for the
Hmm.
society. And yes, some people should get money. If you're widowed and you have a bunch of kids, you should be entitled to get some financial assistance if you need it. If your country has problem at the border, yes, you should find a way to mitigate the problems. Those just come with trying to have a just and ordered society.
Right.
It's not a matter about identity politics. It's a matter of what is going to be good for the nation.
Like you said, though, when we can't agree on, uh, I, building off of the fact that we can't agree on where life begins, we couldn't possibly agree on what the meaning of life is. So let's just come down to the truth first. Does life begin at conception? At conception, yes or no? Here's the evidence for it, and let's work with it.
You know, think about it this way. Once society accepts relativism, moral
Mhm.
relativism, then how do you expect that society to talk about truth, goodness, and justice when it's my truth versus your truth?
Precisely.
Because now, through philosophical relativism, you have legitimatized identity politics.
Yep.
Identity politics is illegitimate once you start talking about truth, goodness, and justice in terms of the order of objective reality. But it makes perfect sense once you sever yourself from reality itself and relativize it. Because once you relativize it, you're going to naturally seek out your own goods instead of the true good.
Moral relativism. Yeah. One thing that it's just a thought process that I like to share before we conclude is when it comes to modernity, I think we could blame at some level just a dis rationalism, I guess, rationalism. In the same way, when it comes to postmodernism, we can blame moral relativism, or at least it's the moral relativism that we have now that rationalism back then led um, from.
That sounds to me like you'll need to elaborate more in a future podcast episode.
Yeah,
You
let's
know,
do that. Let's do that. But
because that sounds like a bold claim to make. And I would naturally be curious to figure out your evidence for such a claim. So maybe we could just leave that as a teaser for a future episode.
let's do that. Let's do that, brother. But yeah, I'm glad that I got that at least on my end, I got to share. Hey, this is what happened. Um, and yeah, I can hope that it was I think provocative if a lot of us didn't hadn't quite we experience things differently, especially from different cultures. And um that's yeah, those eye-opening moments, they're a blessing. Anything you would like to add, Jeremy, before we conclude?
No, just goodbye.
I hear you. Um, do you have any prayer?
A prayer request?
Yes.
Yeah, let's see here. Well, we should pray for the end of the school year.
Mm-hmm.
So all the teachers and students, going off doing their summer things.
Mm-hmm.
We should also pray for all the victims of the school shooting in
Terrible.
Uvalde, Texas that
Yes, man.
happened today.
Yeah.
That was about 90 minutes from San Antonio,
Oh
so
dear.
feels kind of close to home.
Yeah. Oh no. All right.
Um, there's lots of my friends are having babies, so
Mm.
that'd be something to pray for.
Yeah. You don't know if Mrs. Masiotti had her baby yet?
I do not know.
Okay. Okay.
I haven't heard anything at least.
All right. Okay. As Charles has expressed before,
Yeah,
pray for his wife.
yep, certainly. We should pray for the website and that to continue growing.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I would certainly like uh, to ask for my prayer request is for my brother and his bride who got married recently, for their marriage and for their relationship, and that they follow the Lord and that they may be the light in the world, that that this world desperately needs. All right. All right. That concludes today's episode. Thank you, our listeners, for tuning in. We bid you adieu.
And before we go, if you have been enjoying our content, please check out our website. If you have been really enjoying our content, please consider supporting us on Patreon. We do have one of those things.
All links in the website.
All links. We'll also have links on. Do we have like Buzzsprout on links there also?
Yes, we do.
Awesome. So we got links on the website. We got links on Buzzsprout, and there'll also be links on the in the YouTube video description once I get that YouTube video made eventually. And I think also links be on Rumble or whatever else. Too much social media accounts.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you once more for tuning in. God bless.
Do I get to say bye now?
Please.
Okay. Bye.